So there's this book that I've been meaning to read. It's on my to read list, and it's called Bullshit Jobs. And so it's this premise that, like, I think it was a professor, some guy from School of Economics of London or something like that. And his whole, like, I'm again, this from memory, I didn't research this much. His whole idea here is that most jobs out there in the world, like at least in white collar world, like it's just kind of unnecessary. Like, and to summarize it is, like, take a company like HubSpot, Amazon, Twitter. Like, what would happen if you, like, laid off 2/3 of the people? Like, would anything, do we think anything would change other than the company would just make more profit? And this guy says, in most cases, yeah, it would run just fine. And most of the jobs that you have are just worthless. And I kind of agree with him. I agree. I kind of agree. I don't have knowledge of it other than just personal experience, but it does sound like it. I agree.
It's hard because there's no counterfactuals, so you don't get to run the test and actually, you can't split test and run both versions and see which one ends up better. But I've had this inkling for a while when we were getting acquired, and we were getting acquired by Twitch, and as part of it, they're like, hey, you got to, like, basically, like, your whole team is going to come in for a day of interviews, and that's going to decide kind of like if we take your whole team or not. And I had to do my interview as well. And so I'm going in there, and they're like, the classic job interview question, job interview structure is like, well, I ask you a bunch of questions for 95% of it. And then the last 5% of it, I'm like, so do you have any questions for us? And then you're supposed to say something that's also just you showing off to, like, show some other strength of yours, in a different way. And I had one genuine question. I asked it to every single person, and they were kind of like taken aback / they thought I was kind of a jerk. Some people thought they reacted kind of well, like, oh, that's refreshing. I don't know. I hadn't really thought about it. But I could tell other people were slightly offended by my question. And my question was, I would say, how many people work at Twitch? And they would be like, I think we're at 1,800 or 2,000 people now. I said, and how many people do you think, I forgot how I phrased it, but it was something like, how many people do you think Twitch needs to hit its goals? And I was like, how many people do you think should work here? All right, that's how many people do work here. How many people do you think should work here? And people were like, and so I asked the CEO this question too. And I give him credit because he's someone who, like, prioritizes the truth over being right. Like, getting it right is way better than being right. But he's also, like, a kind of a fierce debater. So he's not just going to, like, lay down and be like, oh, yeah, you're right. I changed my opinion about things. Like, so he took the question and he didn't, like, I would say 9 out of 10 CEOs would get quite offended by this question because it basically implies you've mismanaged the company by bloating.
It's a great question. I would not be offended.
He was not offended either. And he was like, that's a good question. He's like, I think like 2,200. So he was like, yeah, I think we're a little short of what we need to hit his goal. And he's like, and then his take was basically like, I'm not saying we have all the right people or the most talented people, or that, like, there's not people here who are underutilized or just kind of, the fat. That wasn't really his point. It was like, I think we can be this ambitious. And to do that, we would need, like 2,200 awesome people, like, working in unison. I still think he was wrong. I think the company could have operated on a third of the people. But
I would have followed up with a few questions. The first one would be, okay, but do you think that you need to hire 2,200 people because that only 10% of them are going to be actually value add, and you just have to hire the rest in order to find that 10%? And then I would say, and also, is it possible that you think you need 2,200 because you really only need like 20% effort from all those people, and that's what your expectation is? And then finally, how much does redundancy come into play here? How much are you just paying them, and you just don't want to mention to them, but you're paying them to sit on the bench, and when the person next to them quits, they just are ready to roll?
Right. Yeah, I didn't follow up that hardcore about it, but I think those are, very, like, valid points. And also, one thing I kind of learned from him was, like, let's take that redundancy one, right? It sounds bad, right? It sounds like, oh man, you're paying a bunch of people to kind of do nothing, just sit around.
No, it's insurance.
And he's like, that was exactly his take, which was like, I think it was on speed. I was complaining how slow we were going. And he's like, going slow is sometimes a feature, not a bug here. And he's like, or like innovation. I was like, oh man, we're not really innovating. Everybody else is. And he didn't say this outright, but I gathered this through our conversations, which is like, there are some things we're going to innovate on, but actually the optimal strategy here is to let a bunch of startups go out and try to innovate. And then if anything works, either buy them or clone them. Like, That is actually the best way for us to innovate. It's like it's free. We get way more experiments done by super caliber, super hungry, motivated people like startup founders and their teams who are laser focused on just that one thing. And they'll try radical experiments that we would never otherwise do. And we don't have to fund it, but we can sit back and watch it. And then when we're ready, we can either go try to acquire them, partner with them, or if they don't want to do either of those, we can build our own and just use our distribution and our brand, which, if we have X millions of users, then we should be able to outcompete them from there. And I think that's actually is the optimal strategy.
I agree with Emmett, I think, on most things. I imagine I would totally
and by the way,
agree
I should say, I'm not putting words in his mouth. This is like what I gathered from a bunch of different conversations. I'm sure he would disagree with 40 or 50% of what I just said. Somehow paraphrasing him poorly.
Yeah, and it's just like your opinion on your takeaway.
My take of his takes.
And I think I would agree with. I bet I would agree with a lot of what he thinks. My issue is when you're like a small company, like under 50 people, you're all in it. A lot of times you're in it for a mission. You're in it to achieve something. I think that you can get away with just being in it because people just like being in the thick of it with their friends. Like they just like the action. When you get a little bit bigger, I think it's less mission oriented and it's just a job, but you still have to put on this face like this to inspire people. And it kind of sucks because the truth is like, well, I know that, a lot of you are only working 40%, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. I baked that into this. I know that a lot of you aren't working at all, but you're really just here in case the guy next to you quits, and then hopefully you're going to train the next person. And I know that a lot of you want to innovate and try these new things, but that's not really what we're going to do. We're going to keep doing the same shit, just a little bit better. And then maybe every once in a while, I'm going to have a team that makes something totally new. And I know all of this, but just tough. And figuring out how to navigate but have that to say what I just said, but in a really inspiring way, or unfortunately just lie. You got to lie or
not
just
saying
act.
It is actually the best way.
Yeah, just act. You got to just act and pretend, and be a politician a little bit. I find that to be incredibly challenging, but I think it's incredibly necessary.
Yes, you're spot on. You're spot on with that. You are spot on with what you just said.
Do you think you could do it?
I think the thing you said, have you ever heard of Dunbar's number?
Yeah. What's it mean again?
So Dunbar's number is basically, it's 150. That's the number. And it's meant to represent the number of different, how many people you can know. How many people you are familiar, you know their name, their face. How many people can one person know, actually, right? Like somebody who's like, I got 6,000 friends. Like, no, well, you don't really know 6,000 people. And so Dunbar's number was used to be 150. It's like in a tribe, you could know 100 up to 150. You could know everybody in the tribe. Past 150, you don't know everybody in the tribe. And then tools like social media and stuff came out that kind of it's like a tool for the human body to do more. So you might be able to know and keep up with more than 150 people now because Facebook makes it easy with a news feed and photos and their name is listed there and whatever. You get to see it all the time. I think what you're saying is your version of Dunbar's number, which is 50. And it's below, this is Dunbar's number. I'll call it. It's below 50, below 50. The people who are there are down for the cause. The larger priority, obviously they care about themselves, but a bigger, one of the top factors, either number one or number two can be the cause. And then or even just that
kid who said he wants to do hood rat stuff with his friends. That could be the cause. I just want to, there was a viral video, years ago, and they interviewed this 9-year-old who, stole his grandmother's car and crashed it. And the guy was like, why did you steal her car? That was really bad of you. And he goes, I try to be good, but sometimes I just like doing hood rat stuff with my friends, like smoking cigarettes and driving cars. Play the video, Ben. You got to play that really quick. Can you play it?
Along the way, he ran over 2 mailboxes, hit 2 parked cars in a Costco parking lot, and struck 2 moving cars near Walmart.
I want to do it because it's fun. It's fun to do bad things, to drive into a car.
But did you know that you could perhaps kill somebody?
Yes, but I wanted to do hood rat stuff with my friend.
First of all,
that's how I feel about startups.
The YouTube feature for this podcast just took us to a whole new level already. First one is great. Second, we need to pull the clip of Yeah, just sometimes I want to do hood rat shit with my friends. And that needs to be a sound clip, Ben, that you can just play when me and Sam are talking about something dumb that we're doing. So just go ahead and cut that one out.
That's the best part about startups. Like, I don't care if it's ad tech. I don't care if I'm selling clothing. I don't care. Like, it feels like
shit.
when you're like pulling shit off and you're like kind of fibbing to people and like, yeah, we really care about our customers. Our team it's like just 3 of you. And there's like, you're just like trying to pretend that you're a big deal. Like, that's hood rat shit. And I love doing that with my friends.
But I wanted to do hood rat stuff with my friend.
By the way, have you struggled to do that now that you're at a big enterprise, SaaS company that's like worth billions of dollars, and hood rat shit is now frowned upon, and you're like, I just yanked it. I yanked it. You can't, and they're like, you just yanked it, Sam? Why did you do that? We have a process for that. Because I definitely could think of like 2 or 3 examples where I was bragging about something I did that was like the startup scrappy thing
like
at Twitch. Well, I would just be like, yeah, like, like for example, there was like a competitor, and I like went, I like talked to the founder, and I was like, yeah, like, I basically found out a bunch of their numbers, and I was like, oh yeah, they're growing this fast. This is how they're doing, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, well, how do you know that? And I was like, well, I talked to him. I told him I was interested in blah, blah, blah. And they're like, ooh. I was like, what? And they're like, well, we just, usually we don't do hood rat shit like that, Sean. Basically, it was like the reward I thought I was creating was like, well, we're going to need to talk to legal, and also corp dev is going to have to, we have a guy whose job is to have those conversations, and we typically sign a letter of engagement before, like whatever. It was like not the exact example, but like things that in the startup, when I was doing my startup, I would be so proud of my hack about like whatever. Or like, I remember once I was negotiating a partnership deal, and like, basically I was just like really negotiating for like every inch, which as a startup, I used to love winning a deal, like doing it, getting a good deal for ourselves. And, and they were just like, they're like, you know what? Like, we'd rather just use our standard deal, and it's more favorable for him, so he'll be happy. And we don't have to like, let you like negotiate deal by deal on these things. And like, in general, we don't really want you negotiating directly with the person. We have like partnerships people who do that.
You're like the guy from the Big Lebowski.
But they were not negotiating.
You're like the Big Lebowski guy. It's like, dude, you need a toe? I'll get you a toe. I'll get you a toe if you need a toe.